Hello there, it's Tom here, and this is Chapter 11 of Gunnerkrigg Court, Dobranoc Gamma, and that just means Good Night Gamma. So we start pretty much straight away in the middle of a series of events again, and I wanted to try, again, playing around with the narrative and showing a countdown of sorts up at the top here. I usually love TV shows or films that start off like this, where there's a series of events going down that makes no sense at first. But once you get to the end of the movie or TV show, it's all explained for you. And I even decided here at the beginning that Annie and Gamma would share a couple words in Polish and not translate it until right at the very end, just to add to the feeling of the reader being an external viewer of what's going on. So we go back a bit more to 9 hours and 21 minutes before that previous series of events. We see Annie and Kat are fiddling around in a little library or something looking for some books when our favourite happy couple, Zimmy and Gamma, pop up. And of course, Kat's wearing a shirt with the logo of musical person that I like. And as a cartoonist, that is one of the requirements of the entrance exam, that you have to at least make some effort to put passing reference to favourite musical bands or TV shows or movies on the apparel of the characters. And another requirement of the cartoonist's entrance exam is mentioning at least once a reference to someone's butt or a butt. So I get that out of the way with here by having Gamma just laugh at Kat mentioning the word butt, but it turns out that the reason why Zimmy and Gamma have turned up is because Gamma needs help and she's very tired. Then again, we flash back another 11,000 hours previously, which is over a year before the current events happening, and we see Zimmy and Gamma meeting. And this alleyway here is a real alleyway that's in Birmingham city centre, and I always used to walk past it and think it was a pretty good place for Zimmy to hang out all the time. So a lot of the backgrounds that I draw in the flashbacks with Zimmy and Gamma are usually based on real areas in Birmingham city centre. I might even have some photos to get the mood across, to show you what I mean. So back again quickly, Gamma is taking a little nap, and Annie has agreed to stay with them. And we get a first inkling here of the fact that Zimmy doesn't really like Kat very much. And we also learn that Zimmy never sleeps, which is why Gamma is so tired right now. So another flashback to 10,000 hours previously, and we see a similar situation where Gamma is falling asleep, and we see the results of that, where when Gamma is not awake, things get a bit out of hand for Zimmy. And then we find out a bit more about exactly what's going on, as Zimmy explains here. Now, on this page is something that really bugged me, especially looking back on my old pages, and that's this thing right here, the way that the text almost intersects with the speech bubbles. And looking back on pages like this, I can't help but cringe every time I see the speech bubbles like this. Back in these days, I was drawing the comic on paper with pencil and pen and scanning it in as usual, but I was doing all the text and the speech bubbles in Photoshop, and I figured the best way to make speech bubbles was just using the ellipse tool. And while that did help out in most situations, especially in terms of speed and consistency, it did lead to situations like this where I couldn't format the text, or at least I wasn't experienced enough to format the text in such a way that there was enough space for the text to breathe. And this can lead to a very cluttered looking page, especially when there's a lot of text in it like on this one. Much later on in the comic I do make the switch to hand-drawn speech bubbles, and it does clear up a lot of this problem. We also see a reappearance of the cut on Annie's face where she was attacked by Jean. The mysterious white ghost on the River Annan a few chapters earlier. But Zimmy pays it no mind because, as she says, strange things happen. And here in another flashback is a recurring theme in Zimmy's world, is this sort of melding of flesh and robotics. And here it manifests in kind of an oddly familiar shape. But of course, because this is 9,000 hours before the current event, it means nothing to Zimmy, just like a lot of the stuff that happens with her. And this is the sort of thing I'd love to focus on if I was to do a comic on these two, about how these distortions that Zimmy experiences or causes they toe the line between prophetic visions and just outright horrors, and Zimmy either does not care what they are or is not aware of what they are, and the story would be about how she comes to terms with dealing with these things and how they may affect her. So we see that some people have come to offer Zimmy a place at the school, and Zimmy has nothing to do with it at first, but as soon as they mention that Gamma would be safe there, she stops to think about it. And this is one of the points where she starts to begin to consider leaving Birmingham and going to the school. The actual moment where she does decide to go to Gunnerkrigg is going to be the focus of one of my extra mini-comics in the future, so keep an eye out for that. And now we see that everything starts messing up. The timer has messed up here, and Zimmy is starting to distort the world around her to a point where even Annie can start to see that things are messing up. And as is usual with Zimmy, she begins to forget what is real and what isn't real, and one of the ways that she tries to keep herself in check with that is by forcing herself to remember that something has already happened or that something has never happened. And she tries to use that to pull herself together here, but because Gamma's been asleep for so long, and this storm that they mentioned has been building up, then she starts to lose a bit of grip on reality. And here we are back just before the beginning of the story. We see that Gamma escorts Zimmy out into the middle of a courtyard, and leaves her there to wait. And then we see in English what the two girls have said to each other previously. We also learn that Zimmy and Gamma have come across these TikToks before, and they have another name for them, namely the Thousand Eyes. So it seems like they've had some run-ins with them in the past. And here we see that Zimmy is clearly swearing at the sky. Now, in my original design for her, and indeed the extra comics that I would like to do with them, she has an obscenely foul mouth, because she's just a product of the environment that she lives in. But I didn't want to run the risk of people being turned off from the comic by the use of foul language. So here she's straight up just calling the sky a bastard, but the thunder from the storm obscures it. And the timer runs out, and we see that she was waiting for the rain to fall on her, and as soon as it hits her head, steam rises up as it evaporates, implying that her head's been just running too hot. She has some fun in the rain, kicks her shoes off, the gunk is washed away from her eyes, and she actually smiles. Annie has no idea what's going on, but she can at least see that she's helped them in some way. And that's the end of that chapter. We do see a little bit of old Zimmy and Gamma here at the end, just walking and talking amongst themselves. This is a thing that Zimmy alludes to at other times in the comic, about rats, and the fact that there are no rats in Gunnerkrigg. Just a little indication of what they used to get up to when they lived on the streets. So I wouldn't say this chapter is a barrel of laughs exactly, but it just shows a little bit of how Zimmy and Gamma deal with certain problems they have. But I also wanted to show that despite their problems, they aren't weak in any way, and they manage to deal and pull through. So that's it. Come back for chapter 12, mainly involves robots.